Call this General Services Committee meeting together November the 7th, 2016 at 12 o'clock. We've got two items on the agenda, and the first one would be presented by Kenny Gabriel, Fire Chief. Kenny?
And our Finance Director, Mr. Troy Tymason.
Really? Yes.
Excellent. Good afternoon. What we have before you today is what we think is pretty exciting news, and the reason Troy is here I asked Troy to be with me is when we started looking at our general obligation bond, one of the items that were there for capital replacement was our 1999 mass casualty truck. And in that truck, we have enough equipment for like 45 patients, and it's something that we feel is important because of the 95 corridor, the 90 corridor, and just the sheer number of events we have here, that's been made a priority. When Mr. Tymason and I met with folks from KCMS, the EMS system, we showed them that list, and they had asked us to not purchase a mass casualty truck because they had funds available to do so. That was a year and a half ago, and the truck should be here within the next couple of weeks. Troy did some negotiating and helped write this the MOU, and they are going to own that rig. That's good for us because they will insure it and they will do all the major repairs. What we will do is anything below $800. So in essence, what we'll do is all the routine maintenance and fuel, and they will take care of all the major expenses. Correct?
You are correct. This is also a phenomenal partnership with the Emergency Medical Services for Kootenai County. The City of Coeur d'Alene is one of the big three agencies that helps drive income into that organization, as unfortunately people get hurt, need to be transported to the hospital, and yet that's all done by professional firefighters throughout our area. And it helps those areas outside of Kootenai, outside of Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and Hayden, where the concentration of people are. So Emergency Medical Services, we complement each other quite well, and so this partnership continues to grow. It's been in existence about 16 years and is one of the best-run organizations for the delivery of those types of service anywhere in our state.
Okay, any questions?
Just one.
Go ahead.
So this is asking for us to approve the concept of entering into an MOU. Is the actual MOU going to come back to committee or back to council?
Actually, this is the actual MOU that Randy drafted for us, so you can strike the concept and just, I apologize for that. This is the MOU.
Is it in the packet?
It should be in the packet.
I don't think it's in.
It didn't print on mine either, so I was...
I have one. Oh, sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I only have one question. Will this be stored at Station 2?
Probably Station 2, yes, in that second building there. And it will be available 24/7, of course, like the one now, and it will be available to everybody that we have mutual aid with. So that includes Spokane. And it's also a part of the USART team, so if we go out to a deployment in McCall, it's going to McCall as well.
Okay.
Speed reading. I was just checking to see that my question is that you do have a not to exceed sum of $800 per year, so that caps this, and it seems like a really great partnership. So, apologize, mine didn't print out. I don't have anything else.
Yeah. I need a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve entering into the attached MOU with KCEMS for the use of a mass casualty response vehicle.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I think you should come to council meeting and maybe there'll be somebody there that'll ask some questions.
We'll be there, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, second item is food court and mobile vendor regulations. Renata.
Good afternoon. This presentation is really just a brief outline of what we've been working on since 2014. This is a culmination of input from many departments. So when we talk about mobile vendors, we involve fire, and we involve planning and zoning, wastewater, building, and municipal services. So, and of course, legal. We couldn't have done any of this without legal, so thank you for our legal guy. But we've had several opportunities for some of the stakeholders to give input. So our most recent one was since we drafted the mobile food court code. We placed both codes online and had it open for about a month of input, and we didn't receive any input from any of the stakeholders. So just this morning, we did receive some input from one of the stakeholders, and it was really just looking for clarification on a few things that is not a substantial change to the code, that we think we can figure out some of that stuff with them. So what I wanted to do is just briefly go over a few things with you. This was our chance to check in with you guys before we took it to the full council, in case there's some things you want us to go back and review and rewrite or research a little bit further. So the proposed food court regulation is intended for 2 or more mobile vendors. So if they congregate on one site, they would need to come in for a food court permit. We have 2 interested parties today. We have one that's sort of already operating on 15th Street and another one that's interested on Government Way. So they come in for a project review meeting, which is similar to a building permit process, where all the departments that are involved sit down around a table and let them know what the permanent code requirements are for their business. Some of the feedback from that was to clarify how many parking spaces they would need and those sort of things. So our mobile food court regulations clarify that. If they are going to do outdoor seating, they would pay the sewer fees accordingly. So for mobile vendor code, it's for each individual mobile vendor. So for the food court, it's the property owner that has to deal with the regulations. For the mobile vendor code, it's the individual vendor. So we are allowing them to have one mobile vendor at a site and not have a food court permit, so they could do one singular sale on site. They'd still come in for their permit, submit all the pertinent information. We make sure that they've got their Panhandle Health license or permit, they call it a letter. And then they would have to meet code compliance for signage. They'd get a fire inspection, and we have a whole sort of fire checklist for them to fill out. And no outdoor seating, again, is what staff is recommending to you today. We're recommending no residential use still. We have the one exception to the rule is the ice cream vendor. We still would allow for that. For the ice cream vendor, since they are going into a residential zone, we would require a criminal background check for that permit only. So those are the highlights, and I am here with lots of staff if you have specific department questions.
Okay, any questions?
I have a question on the food court. With the restrooms to be located within 500 feet, those can be a porta potty restroom.
Well, we do have the porta potty permit now that only allows for a maximum of 180 days. So if they're going to have a permanent court, it comes in under the building code that they would need to have some permanent restroom facilities.
So I was reading this and wanted to start by saying this was a lot of codes coming together. And
Absolutely.
I think there's going to be a lot of questions, and it seems to affect a lot of different areas. It looks like it considers all mobile sales operations. So I had questions about even the sunglass vendor who's not selling food but is on private property. One of the questions I had, you just mentioned, was the ice cream truck delivery person, but there's also these folks who sell frozen seafood in out of their trucks and that sort of thing. How does that fall under this code? Can you just really quickly on that one? I've got
Sure.
just
So-
3 other questions. So.
So our intent is if they're like the frozen fish guy that goes to the site for 1 day a week, so they would fall under the mobile vendor. So they'd have to come in and get a permit from us for that 1 day a week. If they're going to be like the Schwann's man that goes in the residential neighborhood, we would treat them like the ice cream sales, and they would need to come in for their background check and get the permit for that.
Okay.
That's our intent currently.
Okay, so then this also addressed everything, including robotic delivery. That was interesting how deep this went into, and waterway delivery. I thought that was very important that it was that detailed. It was public and private property. So when that came in, my question was, how does this affect the current contracts we have with the vendors who, I think they kind of do a bid operation in City Park and Harbor House and that sort of thing? How does this apply to that?
So what you saw is our intent to sort of blend existing code with our new philosophy. So if they're going to be doing the vending in a building, that's a solid build building, so that's still just a general lease with our Parks Department. They go out and do their request for proposals and bring it to you for contract agreements. If they were going to have like some shaved Hawaiian ice person pull up in Independence Point, then they still need to come in and get the vendor permit. Fire gets to do their inspection, make sure there's no, flammables that are going to explode, and they still enter into a lease agreement with the Parks Department for that location.
And then if a person, say they want to rent floaty toys and inner tubes, but there's no food, and they want to have a mobile unit, they can come and apply to park at the new Memorial Plaza parking lot and rent those types of equipment?
So that would still be sort of the Parks Department purview. If it's within that park land, they would determine if they have space available and do the normal process we normally do. This doesn't open up to just say, anybody come to the city and say, we want to take over this corner of city-owned land and not negotiate some sort of lease agreement with the city. This doesn't just give them the right to pull up and do that.
And that's kind of what I'm looking at, is how does this, set up a territorial competitive
Right.
situation
Right.
within this permit program for non-food. So I'm hoping that was addressed. And then there's another piece in here under restaurants where it says that a person, it's 5.75.030. I know you have them all memorized. Just a minute, and let me tell you what it says.
You would be rough.
It's talking about outdoor eating facilities associated with a fixed restaurant. And it says that they can be in the public right-of-way as long as they're in compliance with another chapter. So is it saying that a mobile vendor can be in the public right-of-way if they are attached to the restaurant that they're in front of?
I think we can have Randy clarify that a little bit more, but I think that was taking some of our existing code and integrating in this new philosophy, and we wanted to clarify that this doesn't prohibit the current restaurants from getting those outdoor eating permits and having items on our sidewalk, because under the public section, we've said no vending on public sidewalks.
Okay.
So Randy, is that clear?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It was to address the issue of the sidewalk seating during the summer along Sherman and various places. It's to make sure that people understand that this code is not applying to those. It's rather the encroachment permit process that they get.
Okay, so that's a whole different set
It
of
is.
permit for the sidewalk seating.
Correct.
In other words, every restaurant that opens up could say, well, I'm going to skip the sidewalk seating and just get a mobile cart permit and put it in front of my restaurant. That could still happen, but
I don't think they can be on the sidewalks
they couldn't be on the
they
sidewalks.
can't, or in
Okay.
the streets, so.
Okay. Is that how you're seeing that too? This is really,
Kathy, we have to have you up to the microphone if you can. So currently, they come in for an encroachment permit for tables and chairs, and the code prohibits mobile vending on our sidewalks and streets.
okay.
They also have special conditions they have to meet, totally independent of this, as what time the tables and chairs have to be taken down, and quite a few other conditions that they have to meet under the outdoor sidewalk.
And one of I have just one more question, but one of my overall, in looking at this and being involved in tourism here for as long as I have, and I know how important, those summer months are, and that's when this type of code really affects the business community. And so I want to make sure that, I know you guys have done a huge amount of work on this. Just reading through how many different codes had to be pulled together must have been just it's really commendable. But there's brick and mortar restaurants that deal with different issues on a 12-month basis. They pay different property taxes. They have a whole different set of problems. And so I want to assure that we're protecting our business community all the way around and still encouraging these entrepreneurs and different services to, our summer community. And that's kind of one of the filters I was looking at this with, to make sure that we've done everything to be fair to both sides, and we aren't having one code step on top of another code, and that seems like it's a lot of, those things to think ahead of what have we created here. So I'm really looking at that. My last question, actually it's probably not my last question, I've got a billion of them, but my last one for today is what is the plan to informing and enforcing this about this new regulation? Because I think this is something that I've seen folks with trailers with scooters on the back, and they're renting them off their scooters. Not that I think it's a cool idea, but how are they going to know that they may be in violation? Is there going to be a first-time warning situation or something
Usually,
like that?
like with most of our codes, we try and go out with code enforcement first, and when the code actually gets authorized, we'll be able to give them a packet of information, and we can kind of do a did you know, and here's what you need to do, and give them the permit application or give them a link to our website so they can start to come in and get that information. We just pulled Panhandle Health District's list this morning. They have about 20 active vendors in Coeur d'Alene that they have permitted.
That are food related?
That are food
Okay.
related. And so we have a majority of those on our email list, so we've been keeping them in the know at that point as well. But I think our first initial effort is really going to be just to work with code enforcement and just have them go around and hand out a packet of information. And say,
then,
here you go.
Kathy, sorry, I know you're trying to run away, but then the folks that are, like I said, in this, we're renting, inner tubes off of the back of our trailer on Sherman Avenue. That's just going to be something that would code enforcement have to just stumble upon them, and then once are they kept in a system you track to say, well, we've kind of already
Yeah, they go
told
into our
you?
code enforcement system, and if they continue to violate, then we do have actions we can take on that, so.
Yeah. Okay. Boy,
And just
a
so you
lot
know,
of
too,
work.
Kiki, the Downtown Association, the Chamber have been involved in this since day one, too.
Good, thank you, good to know.
Anything else?
No.
Now, you had meetings with the vendors. Now, did they know that this was going to be brought up at?
Yep.
And nobody showed up?
Correct. We got no replies. We got one this morning, like I mentioned earlier, who's been somebody who's been very active in the code development. So we feel like we've built a pretty good relationship with her and can go through her questions pretty straightforward with her. And for example, one was, well, we didn't clearly state it was the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department we were meaning. So we just need to explain to her that when it's our code, it always means the city. So things like that. She had a couple good questions regarding the hand washing stations. So our next iteration might be just a little cleaned up from this one and remove some of those things, but nothing substantial. Our substantial intent is what you see in front of you today.
So you basically you're saying then that you think that the vendors are in support of this?
Yeah, I think as much as they can be. I mean, I think several of them still don't feel like they should be regulated, and we're not going to change their mind on that. But the majority of them, I think, feel like we've worked really closely with them, and we've heard them out, and we've bent where we could bend, and there's just some things we need to enforce, such as fire codes and building codes and accesses and trash and all that good stuff.
And I do commend you. I know that we talked about this in that, I had talked to a couple of restaurant owners who had some concerns about Spokane-based food truck groups coming over at certain times, and, I can see where they might have a concern to say, they're kind of creaming off the great tourism summer that we need to make a living on, so that when January and February hit, we're still able to stay in business. And so this I think addressed most of those issues. And I also think there's a lot of entrepreneurs, and there's going to be more. And so the person who wants to sell sunscreen and beach towels and, all of that on the beach, there's got to be a place for them to fit into this code somehow and be fair and enforceable. So I really commend you on trying to pull all these together. It's important.
Thank you.
Amy, do you have any more questions?
No, I guess one comment. When you sent out the additional information, the food safety sheet, and so I was hoping to hear some feedback on that. I think it's great. Give them a heads up on the project review process and letting them know what the fire department's expectations are and what they need to do. So,
Yes, we've sent that to them a while ago, and we actually have had 2 project review meetings on food courts. So those property owners have already been into the city.
great. Well, it looks good.
Well, I'm gonna suggest that we don't make any decision today, that we send it to the full council and have full council discuss this and everything. And then will we have something in the paper that it would be brought up at our next council meeting?
We
At
can
this-
send something to them for sure.
Okay,
We'll get Sam on it.
okay, well, that's what my suggestion is that we don't make any decision, that we send it to full council.
Great.
Okay?
It'll be an ordinance, so that'll be perfectly fine. We'll put it under other business.
Yeah, I think having a little discussion here to get some stuff out into the public, get the conversation going a little bit could, will help the rest of the council members be informed too. So I appreciate all that work and jumping to the table when you need to, Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you.
God, there's a whole lot of stuff here.
There is. We
And
definitely.
a lot of it is from our existing code, too. We're trying to bring it into there. So this is also the time for the council to say, well, we don't really like that, because it's been around for many years. I just incorporated it into one ordinance, so
So you're saying that there might be some things here that we should change?
well, it's certainly up to the council to look at that and decide if it's worded the way they want it worded, and does what the council wants to be done.
And that's the important, like I said, bringing robotics into it, bringing waterways into it, all of these things are, it's really time to take a deep look at this and not create things for the future that are going to be problematic, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we're adjourned. God, I thought that there would be